Don't cry. You're perfect.
Arcane drips emotion. A little boisterous, but I feel like there's so many lines that steal scenes and so many scenes that steal the whole show. It's like every beat, there's this new artistic moment that feels like a moment in your life where maybe you could take something from that, where you're watching it and you're just saying, this is art. But within the context of Arcane, which scene actually is the best? What scene was the most evocative? What scene is the most expressive? What scene actually has the most technical skill in animation, the best voice acting? Or just in the end, what's my favorite scene? Well, to start this discussion off of comparing and contrasting different scenes, I will talk about, I think, the scene that touched me most personally. I guess I could say this is my favorite scene. And it's very short. It is dialogue-less, wordless. There is just one man running, and it's beautiful. This is the scene where Viktor runs. So this scene's animation, let's just talk about that specifically, the intricacies of the running. And I am not sure the technique they used in order to animate Viktor so more than perfectly, superhumanly, extraordinarily, who goes from a walk, a limp, to a run, and the entire transition the entire time. It is entirely, completely, and I think perfectly believable. What really sells the cartoon 3D animation sometimes, and especially in this scene, is the fact that they're emulating the 3D camera as if it was held by a hand, as if it was a real-world camera. And that expectancy that we have with cinema for cameras to work a certain way is really delivering us a product that is perfectly immersive for this perfectly emotive, emotional moment. A moment that is paralleled by earlier, where we see him actually chasing his boat, stumbling and falling and not succeeding, and here actually overtaking the boats in the background. But do notice that he's running from right to left. In the following scene, showing the folly of using the arcane magics within him and knowing the future that's in store for Viktor with glorious evolution, we know that this is a symbolism for progress not always going in a straight line. And maybe he is being led astray. So there is a bit of tragedy with this character from past, current, present, and even in the future coming soon. But if we wanted to talk about the best voice acting overall, the most beloved characters who we championed throughout the first 3 episodes came to a crashing conclusion at the end of episode 3 for Act 1 when Powder just set off her monkey bomb. This scene I'm putting here for just the most heartbreaking voice acting I think I have ever heard.
I only wanted to help my own.
I told you to stay away.
Please.
I told you to stay away!
No. Why did you leave me?
And Vi realized what had happened. She was full of a mix of different emotions. Powder was as well. We are the audience, don't know how to feel because we're feeling all of the feelings, and these voice actors are delivering more and punching us in the gut and cutting our hearts, bleeding everywhere. We're watching the show and we're hurting, and we hear these voice actors and it feels like they're really feeling it. This scene is alive and real. And at the end, we see a twist and a turn with the character of Silco. Silco comes, who has just been the pure, obvious, clear antagonist. And yet, Powder, with all of her anger, tackles him and hugs him. She's abandoned. She's lost. And then we get to see finally a true spark of Silco that maybe there's more there. He's not just a psychopath. He's not just a bad guy. What is this that he's feeling?
It's okay. I'll show them. We will show them all.
The conclusion of episode 3 of Act 1 was perfect. But is there a scene that really just defines Arcane artistically as a anime or animation? What is the most arcane scene of Arcane? And I think very clearly and obviously most people would probably agree, the most Fortiche X Riot Games scene of Arcane, and debatably probably most people's favorite or just the most fun scene, and dark and twisted because that's Arcane, it's all sorts of different feelings, is going to be Ekko versus Jinx. Extensively, I wouldn't doubt I could for any scene just do an entire video talking about all the little nuances, but this one mainly, especially, I think, is actually more simplistic, and yet maybe even more potent because of it. Ekko comes out to save the day, the boy's savior. He comes to steal the Hextech crystal from Jinx, to give it to Vine Caitlyn to deliver to the council, and he needs to stop Jinx. Jinx, who is somebody that he had a crush on, somebody that he loved, somebody that he grew up with as Powder, but has now turned into a villain, into somebody who has killed his friends, who stands to fight against everything Ekko believes in. This is a fight of ideologies, but this is where we get such little subtle cues that have been building up throughout the show that have finally are going to hit a climax here with this fight, which is not even really a fight. It is a single encounter, a single blow for the most part. Just a quick moment in time that is mostly like a miniature music video where the art actually kind of gets peeled away and we get this sort of stop motion-y kind of 2D animation with a very meta hip-hop song that's just kind of slapped on, and yet so fitting because there's a funness. And at the very beginning of the fight, we actually see Ekko's emotions shift to a realization of, okay, this is the moment. This is where, to the death, I'm gonna have to fight my childhood friend. And being Zonites, being of Zon, specifically growing up the way they grew up, they have fun in this moment. And this is why I think it's kind of a beautiful scene. The very specific smirk, the posture of Ekko, the sort of catty, flirtatious, posing of Jinx as well. All of this to the beat of the song and then referencing back to the childhood. Everything in terms of visuals was perfect. This was the most visually Arcane scene of Arcane. And I hope moving forward into season 2, we get a lot more of these mini music videos strewn throughout. Using fan service in order to service the story, I think is a really innovative idea. But finally, to wrap up this essay, I want to talk about, in the end, not just what scene is the most Arcane and what scene has the best animation or what scene has the best voice acting, but in the end, what scene, in terms of the story, in terms of a conclusion, which one was the most potent? Which one speared us? Which one gutted us? Which one left us filled with so many emotions that we felt empty? And I think that has to go to Arcane's perfect scene. This scene by itself alone could have probably multiple YouTube videos talking about how intricate it is, the voice acting, the animation, how potent it is for the story, everything about it. And very clearly, that is the intention. The scene was so important that it takes actually half an episode to conclude, which makes sense because this is the conclusion of the arc that is the identity crisis of Jinx, the arc of Vi and Caitlyn coming together. The arc of so many characters ends this episode at the literal conclusion of season 1, but right here is really the birth of so much more to come. This scene felt like if the scripts were all put together of potential futures for all of these characters, it was all just lines of yarn, and it was just sort of chaotically thrown about, nodding up and getting twisted and turned, and somewhere along the line, as you're watching this, you're slowly seeing Jinx, or Powder, but eventually Jinx, cut the thread. All of the knotted potentials of what could have been erased, and now a future is set. Here we are watching the unraveling of the thread of fate. And spectacularly, it involves the literal unraveling of a character that has been so torn throughout this entire show, finally coming to her senses, in a sense. It's all coming together with this dinner party. Jinx having her identity crisis and Silco fighting for his daughter. This was beautiful. It's not just about Jinx. This is also about Vi. Desperate struggle for Powder. And funny enough, actually, even though Caitlyn has really been a B character this entire time, that is literally her arc. She is someone who wants to be important, who wants to do more, who wants to do good, and once again, fails. And Silco, with all of his ambitions for Zaun and everything that we've come to know about the history and culture of Zaun, the fight that they have to go through, he would give all of it up because all of his ambitions and everything he believes in is really personified by his daughter, Jinx. And that is specifically Jinx. Powder is just an innocent girl who would probably be eaten alive in the world of Runeterra, not just Zaun, but Jinx. Jinx actually is a genius. Jinx has the potential to change the world. Silco, this seeming psychopath, has been undone by his daughter, who he loves. And in fact, the scene near the end ends with Jinx deciding that, no, Silco wanted to kill Vi, went to shoot Vi, to stop her from turning her into powder, but Jinx turned around, stopped him, and killed Silco. And his dying words were,
Don't cry. You're perfect.
and the rest of the scene, with the amazing score that Arcane has brought to life, dripping of emotion, shows Jinx taking her Hextech device that she's been working on and building on, hopes and dreams of Silco and all the other Zaunites, and she aims directly at the heart, the council of Piltover, who, as we know in their final moments, were actually voting for Zaun to have its own independence. Finally, progress was being made, but progress isn't a straight line. Regardless, we fight.